Hello and welcome to the show, and today
we are doing a new series on the channel where every start of the month we do a new build, well essentially a new build for a new computer through different things, say different budgets, different purposes that the builds need for. Obviously I can't build it because I don't have unlimited money, but yeah, today's build is a £500 budget RYZEN build that can play any game 1080p 60 FPS at medium to high settings. But just before we start, I'd like to say this is inspired by Hardware Unboxed thing where he does this, but he builds it and tests it. Obviously I can't afford that, but today let's get into this. So starting off with the processor, it's a Ryzen 5 1400. It's a quad-core 8-thread processor with a base clock of 3.2 and it boosts to 3.4 GHz. So that's decent, but you can overclock this chip with the B350 and X370 boards. We do have a B350 in this build, so we can overclock this chip. And this chip will overclock to anywhere between 3.6, 3.7 to 3.8 maybe gigahertz with adequate cooling. Even the stock cooling can do a bit of overclocking, but that's generally not really necessary with the Ryzen chips. I mean, with this chip you might want to overclock it a little bit, but for the most part, for $169 or pounds, it's really good value, and it's definitely worth picking up if you are looking at a tight budget but really want those extra threads and extra cores that you can't quite get with Intel at this price point. I'd just like to mention, however, that on Amazon it's £160, so we can keep it within the budget. Moving on, we have the motherboard. This is an Asus Prime B350M-A Micro ATX AM4 motherboard. Now this is £60, thereabouts, £68-ish, and it's a B350 board, as I've said, so you can overclock the Ryzen chips on this. You can overclock the Ryzen 7, Ryzen 5 and Ryzen 3 coming later this year. You can overclock on this motherboard. It's decent overclocker actually. It's about the same as its more expensive ATX partner. Yeah, you can get the same overclocks on it essentially. Really good motherboard, especially for the price, £68. 4 RAM slots. You can overclock on it, and it supports up to 64 gigabytes of RAM. Of course, we can't afford that in this budget, but yeah, it supports up to 64 gigabytes of RAM. So if you're really wanting to get into media creation, like really professional, but you just can't, like on the other boards, you need more than 32 gigabytes of RAM, which you'll never need, but if you did, there's the 64 gigabytes that you can put in this, and with the 4 RAM slots, that's even better. Next up we have RAM. Now for £50 we have 8 gigabytes of Crucial Ballistic Sports DDR4 2400 megahertz RAM. Now 2400 megahertz is really good, especially for Ryzen. However, you can't get the 3000 to 3200 megahertz, even though the motherboard supports it. But the Ryzen at the moment is kind of a little bit iffy on that. But the higher you can get, the stable you can get, it's really good. 2400 is definitely the sweet spot for Ryzen at the moment. 2400, anything below, slow. Anything above, maybe 2666 is probably the highest you'll ever go. But it's 2 4 gigabytes things. So if you wanted, you can put 16 gigs in this build if you want. The motherboard does support it, but it's very good RAM, as I've said, because it's fast, and for £50 you can't really get anything better. Next up we have the hard drive, WD Caviar Blue 1TB hard drive. Can't fit an SSD into the budget, as I've said. For £40, this 1TB hard drive, you can store your operating system, or your games, or your things, and it will be absolutely fine. It will do you for ages. But if you can afford an SSD, I'd recommend putting the operating system on that. For the graphics card, this is what makes or breaks a gaming PC. We have a Zotac 1050 Ti. I wanted to maybe cheap out on the RAM a little bit and the storage a little bit to get that extra Ti, the extra 2 gigs of RAM, extra texture units, extra CUDA cores from the Ti variant of the 1050. Nvidia's most budget-orientated GPU they make at the moment. Obviously, it's 4 GB of VRAM, very good budget graphics card. For £127, you really can't go wrong. It is absolutely brilliant for budget builds of literally almost any budget. And even if you were on a tight build, say you wanted to do it for £350 or even slightly less, you could go for the non-TI variant. That will still play 1080p gaming, maybe not quite 60, or if you wanted to play on slightly lower graphics, 60 FPS. Absolutely brilliant graphics card, and even the non-TI variant is good, but the TI definitely good, and for £127, absolute great deal. Now for the case, we have something not very well known. In fact, it's right here on the screen, right there. It's been up this entire, that's what the computer would look like if someone actually built it, which you guys might want to if you're on a budget and you want to get into really high gaming and productivity, because this build is good at productivity. This is a case, Micro ATX, Zalman ZMT4 Micro ATX case, and it's got blue lights, it comes with blue fans. It's £24. £24 for this case, and I think you can get a windowed version for about £30 with a window on the side, but yeah, this case I think is definitely worth it if you're on a massive budget. As I said, Micro ATX, so you can't put an ATX full-size motherboard or eATX motherboard. I think you can put an ITX motherboard and a Micro ATX motherboard. Those are the two things. This case, you can put the motherboards in, and it is absolutely great deal. And finally for this build, we have the power supply. It's a deep cool 400 watt ATX PSU. Now 400 watt may seem a bit low, like I know AMD parts and 400 watts, but this build comes to about 300 watts, and so you have extra headroom for 400 watts. It should definitely be enough for this build, definitely enough. And for £27, 400 watt power supply, it runs quite quiet and it won't fail. It's decent brand actually, you might not have heard of it, but in fact I don't have a deep cool. I have an aero cool integer 700 watt power supply, 80 plus gold. This is the power supply that's going into my new build. But yeah, deep cool, similar brand, really good brand, great deal. And that was the £500 budget RYZEN build. It comes to, on PC Part Picker, it comes to £494 as of saying this. Might go down in price, might go up a little bit, it won't go up too much, don't worry guys. But definitely great budget. £500 RYZEN build, can't get any better at £500 in my opinion. Maybe if you wanted to go Intel for a 1 or 2 more FPS in games, but you won't get the productivity, you won't be able to stream very well. But definitely if you want to do anything more than gaming, say if you wanted to do videos, I've got to mention this at the start of the video. All these builds at the start of the month will not include an operating system, because prices on operating systems vary. You can get it for free if you do some sketchy things. You can get it for really cheap if you get it from Kingwin for about a couple of pounds. It depends which operating system you want, so I'm not going to include that. Yeah, you can pick up Windows 10 for free, legally. You just won't be able to do any amazing changes to the operating system in terms of looks and everything. But anyway, that's all we've got time for in this video. If you want, you can comment down, like the video, comment down below, maybe subscribe, I don't know. And I hope you enjoyed this RYZEN build. If you want to see more like this every month, and if you want to, if you are thinking about buying a computer and building it yourself, like this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.